It is a really funny thing about trying to master a second language, particularly English.
Yeah, it really can be.
I mean, for most of us, the experience is exactly like someone walking up to you, looking you dead in the eye, and handing you a dense 400-page physics manual on how a bicycle works.
That is such a perfect way to put it. A purely theoretical manual.
Exactly.
Right.
And you sit in a sterile classroom for years with this manual. You memorize the exact gravitational forces pulling on the frame.
Right.
You calculate, like, the friction coefficients of the rubber tires on different types of pavement. You study the precise angular momentum required to stay upright while taking a sharp left turn.
All the mechanics.
All of it. And you pass written exams on bicycle physics with flying colors. You get an A+. And then one day, you finally step outside into the real world, you climb onto an actual bicycle, and you immediately crash straight into a thorny bush.
You completely wipe out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a remarkably accurate way to describe the traditional education system's approach to language.
It really is, isn't it?
Absolutely. Because we spend a decade acquiring the mechanical blueprints of the language. The structural diagrams of how sentences are supposed to be built.
Right, the blueprints.
But the moment we actually try to pedal, to actually move our mouths and speak to a human being, we just freeze. We have zero balance. We have absolutely no muscle memory.
And I think a lot of people tuning in right now are living that exact bicycle metaphor.
Oh, without a doubt.
You have probably studied English in a classroom for years. You have memorized the past perfect continuous tense. You have filled out those endless, soul-crushing grammar worksheets where you have to circle the correct preposition.
Oh, the worst.
Yeah, and you've taken the standardized written tests. But when a native speaker walks up to you in a coffee shop or maybe at a conference and simply asks for directions, you feel completely paralyzed.
The vocabulary just vanishes.
It totally vanishes. Your mind just goes totally blank. So today, we are taking that 400-page physics manual and we are throwing it straight in the recycling bin.
Which is incredibly liberating. I mean, the focus of our deep dive today is to bypass those frustrating traditional textbooks entirely.
Yes, please.
We are looking at practical, highly actionable methods and resources to build a personal, science-backed language immersion environment right at your home.
I love that.
Yeah, it is custom-tailored for you, the self-driven learner who wants to finally achieve actual spoken fluency.
And to do this, we have pulled together a really fascinating stack of sources for this deep dive.
We really have. It is a great list.
We're going to be looking at the foundational academic work of the renowned linguist Stephen Krashen, specifically diving deep into his language acquisition theory.
That one is huge.
It is. We're also pulling practical frameworks from comprehensive platform guides like Migaku and Mosalingua. Plus, we have some incredible neuroscience breakdowns regarding speaking exercises from a platform called Practice Me.
And we cannot forget the media strategies.
Right. The strategies for leveraging media from the Egyptian American Center. And finally, some very actionable, gritty fluency routines from expert language learning channels like Towards Fluency, Speak Languages, and English in Minutes.
It is a really robust collection of knowledge.
Yeah.
And I'd say the through line connecting all of these sources is the idea that you do not need a prestigious university or some pricey tutor to rewire your brain for fluency.
You really don't.
No, you just need the right mechanics and the right environment.
But, before we can get to those daily tactics, the actual things you're going to do tomorrow morning with your coffee, we kind of have to look under the hood first.
I'll definitely do.
We have to understand why those traditional school methods failed you so spectacularly in the first place. Because if we don't understand the underlying mechanics of how the human brain actually absorbs language, we are just going to repeat the exact same mistakes.
That is so true.
And this brings us right to Stephen Krashen's core philosophy. He makes a distinction that honestly blew my mind a little bit because we usually treat these two words as synonyms. What is the fundamental difference he is pointing out here?
Well, Krashen makes a very sharp, uncompromising distinction between learning and acquisition.
Okay.
In his theoretical framework, these are not just different words for the same thing. They are entirely different cognitive processes operating in completely different parts of the brain.
Wait, really? Different parts of the brain?
But essentially, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Learning is what you did in middle school and high school. It is a highly conscious process. It involves knowing the explicit rules, applying deductive reasoning, studying grammar structures on a whiteboard, and, taking exams.
Right.
It is the conscious accumulation of facts about a language.
So it is the flashcards. It is the verb conjugation tables that you have to recite out loud. It is getting an essay back covered in red ink because you used the wrong article.
That is the absolute perfect visualization of learning. Now, acquisition, on the other hand, is the subconscious development of proficiency.
Subconscious.
Yes, it happens organically through natural communicative settings where your brain is focused entirely on the meaning of the message, not on the grammatical structure delivering it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Consider how you acquired your native language as a toddler. I mean, you didn't sit in your crib studying subject-verb agreement or agonizing over irregular plurals.
Oh, definitely not.
You just desperately wanted to know if you could have a cookie, or you wanted to tell your parents that the dog took your toy.
I just wanted the cookie. I really didn't care if it was a direct object or an indirect object.
Exactly. And because you only cared about the meaning, your brain subconsciously mapped the syntax without you ever actively trying to learn it.
Wow.
Krashen argues that acquisition is the central, most important means for gaining linguistic skills, and that is not just for children, but for adults as well.
So adults can still do this.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, he posits that conscious learning, all those years of grammar drills, is virtually useless for promoting spontaneous, real-time spoken fluency.
Okay, wait. I have to pause here. If conscious learning doesn't actually make us fluent, what does it do?
Well,
Because it cannot just be a complete void. I mean, all those years of high school English had to do something to my brain, right?
they absolutely did do something, but it is likely the very thing causing your current frustration.
Oh, great.
According to Krashen's monitor hypothesis, conscious learning creates a monitor in your brain.
A monitor, like
Yeah.
a computer screen.
More like a highly critical internal editor. Or think of it as a rigid grammar police officer standing right at the doorway of your vocal cords.
Okay, I have definitely felt that guy before.
Right. Here's how it functions. When you are having a conversation and you initiate a sentence, you are using your acquired subconscious language.
Right?
But right before you actually speak the words out loud, your internal monitor quickly scans the sentence to see if it breaks any of the explicit grammar rules you memorized in school.
So I have this subconscious impulse to say something, but before the sound actually leaves my mouth, this little police officer demands to see ID for every single verb tense.
Yes.
He is just like, "Excuse me, sir, is that an irregular past participle? Let me check the textbook."
That is an incredibly accurate way to describe the cognitive load.
Yeah.
And Krashen actually breaks language learners down into 3 distinct types based on how heavily they rely on this internal police officer.
Okay, what is the first type?
First, you have the monitor overusers. These are the people who are constantly hesitating, constantly interrupting themselves, and constantly self-correcting mid-sentence.
Oh, yeah.
Their speech is incredibly broken, stuttering, and it lacks any real rhythm or fluency because they are utterly terrified of making a structural mistake.
I have absolutely been a monitor overuser.
Most of us have.
I remember being at a dinner party once trying to tell what should have been a very simple, funny story in my target language. And halfway through the punchline, I literally stopped talking for about 5 seconds.
Oh, no.
Yeah, because my brain was screaming, wait, is this supposed to be the present perfect or past simple? And I was running through the verb tables in my head.
And you lose the momentum.
Totally. By the time I figured out the correct grammar, the moment had completely passed. Everyone had stopped listening. The joke was just dead.
Which is tragic, because language is fundamentally about human connection. And the monitor overuser sacrifices that connection on the altar of grammatical perfection.
Wow. Yeah, sacrificing connection.
They are so fixated on form
Right.
that they completely obliterate the meaning and the flow of the interaction. They have essentially been traumatized by a grammar-heavy education that penalized every single tiny error.
So what is the opposite of that? Just never checking the rules at all?
That brings us to the second type, the monitor underusers.
Okay.
These learners rely completely on their acquired language, on what simply feels right to them in the moment. They speak incredibly fluidly, they never hesitate, and they are usually very confident and engaging.
That sounds great.
It does. But however, their speech is absolutely riddled with grammatical errors. And interestingly, they are essentially impervious to corrections.
Wait, impervious, like they don't hear it.
You can explicitly tell an underuser a grammar rule 10 times, and they will keep making the mistake because their internal editor is completely switched off.
I see. So they are riding the bicycle at 50 miles an hour, completely unbalanced, just crashing through the bushes, but having a great time doing it.
Having a great time, yes, though sometimes native speakers might struggle to understand their precise meaning
Mm-hmm.
because the structure is so chaotic,
Right.
which leads to the pedagogical goal of Krashen's theory becoming an optimal monitor user.
Finding the middle ground.
Yes, exactly. An optimal monitor user is someone who uses just the right amount of that internal editor at the right time.
How does that work in practice?
Well, in a fast-paced, spontaneous conversation, they keep the police officer locked away. They do not let it interfere with their spoken fluency. They just let the words flow naturally to maintain connection. But if they sit down to write a formal email to their boss, or if they are drafting a prepared speech where they have the luxury of time, they will call on the monitor to check the rules and ensure accuracy.
That makes total sense. They control the monitor does not control them.
Perfectly said.
Let me bring in a real-world example here because I was reading through the source from Amy Wilson regarding the Japanese English as a foreign language system, or EFL. And this completely underscores what you're saying.
Oh, the Japanese system is a fascinating case study.
It really is. In Japan, secondary school students often go through 6 solid years of intense grammar translation methods. I am talking about classrooms where English is barely spoken aloud at all.
Barely spoken.
Right. Instead, the students are dissecting complex sentences on a chalkboard, translating them word by word into Japanese, and memorizing thousands of obscure grammar exceptions.
All to prepare for the university entrance exams.
Exactly. These massive, high-stakes university entrance exams, like the center test, are almost entirely focused on deductive reasoning, reading comprehension, and structural knowledge.
So it is all learning, no acquisition.
None. So you have students who have studied English intensively for 6 years. They can diagram a sentence that would make an American college student cry.
Right.
And yet, the data shows their actual spoken proficiency levels remain remarkably low. They get out into the real world and they struggle to order a cup of coffee.
It is a massive disconnect.
To me, that is the smoking gun. I mean, it proves that conscious learning doesn't just fail to create fluency, it actively builds a wall that blocks it.
The Japanese EFL example is a profound case study in the limitations of the conscious monitor. It absolutely proves that memorizing rules does not convert into spontaneous production.
Yeah.
But it also highlights another crucial pillar of Krashen's theory, one that explains why that wall you mentioned is so impenetrable.
Oh, what is that?
It is called the effective filter hypothesis. And honestly, if you are going to teach yourself English at home, understanding this filter is the key to everything.
The effective filter. Break that down for me. What is it actually filtering?
Think of the effective filter as a literal psychological barrier in your brain. It is constructed out of negative emotional states. So high stress, anxiety, low motivation, and a crippling lack of self-confidence.
Okay.
When a learner is placed in an environment that triggers these emotions, the filter rises.
Like sitting in a dead silent classroom knowing that the teacher might randomly call your name to read a paragraph out loud in front of 30 judgmental teenagers?
Yes, the ultimate nightmare scenario for language acquisition. In that exact moment, your heart rate spikes, your palms sweat, and your effective filter is sky high.
I am getting stressed just thinking about it.
And when that filter is up, it acts as a brick wall in front of the language acquisition center of your brain. The tragic irony is that even if the teacher is providing excellent, perfectly comprehensible English input, the language literally cannot enter your subconscious.
It just bounces off.
It bounces right off the wall. You are in a state of fight or flight. Your brain is focused entirely on survival, not on acquiring new syntax.
That makes so much sense. I remember times in language classes where I was so stressed about my upcoming turn to speak that I didn't hear a single word the 3 students before me said.
Exactly.
My ears were working, but my brain was totally locked down. So how does this tie into our mission today? Because we promised a toolkit for the self-driven learner.
It ties in because our overarching goal today is to help you permanently lower your effective filter.
Right.
When you are sitting alone on your couch in your sweatpants with a cup of tea, there is no teacher to judge you. There is no high-stakes exam to fail. There are no peers to laugh at your pronunciation.
It is a safe space.
You are in total control of your own comfortable, low-stress environment. The wall comes down, you are relaxed, you feel safe, and suddenly your brain is wide open and highly receptive to processing the language.
Okay, so let's picture this. We are on the couch, the wall is down, our effective filter is at 0.
Perfect.
We know from Krashen that acquiring language requires what he calls comprehensible input, which basically means consuming language that is just slightly above our current level, but that we can still mostly understand through context.
Correct.
But here's the practical problem. How do we actually consume that input efficiently? Because we just established that staring at a textbook or doing flashcards isn't going to cut it. How do we structure our listening throughout the day?
This is where we shift from theory into daily strategy. The comprehensive guide we have from the platform Migaku provides a brilliant framework for managing your input.
What do they suggest?
They argue that most language learners waste hundreds of hours doing the wrong type of listening at the wrong moment, which leads to massive frustration and burnout. To truly master the inputs, you have to strictly separate your audio consumption into two very distinct modes. Active listening and passive listening.
Let's unpack the first one. Active listening. It sounds like work. What does that actually look like in practice for someone sitting at their desk?
It is work. Active listening is incredibly intensive. It requires 100% of your cognitive focus.
So no distractions.
None. When you are actively listening, you are sitting down, your phone is away, and your explicit goal is to understand every single word, phrase, and grammatical structure you hear.
Okay.
You are not just letting the sound wash over you. You are pausing the podcast after every sentence. You are rewinding to catch a linked sound you missed. You have a dictionary open, and you are actively looking up unknown vocabulary.
So if I am listening to a 5-minute news clip, it is not going to take me 5 minutes.
Not at all. A dense 5-minute audio clip might take you 30 or 40 minutes to get through during an active listening session.
Wow, that is intense.
You are dissecting it. And because it requires so much focus, it burns mental energy very quickly. You cannot sustain active listening for 3 hours. If you try to push through, your brain will fatigue, and you'll just stop retaining information.
And I imagine you definitely cannot multitask while doing this.
Multitasking is the enemy of active listening. If you try to do an active listening session while answering work emails or cooking a complex dinner, your brain simply cannot process the new linguistic information.
Your attention is split.
Exactly. You end up in this terrible middle ground where you aren't really learning the language, and you probably just sent a typo-ridden email to your boss. Active listening is strictly for when you are in dedicated study mode, and your goal is to decode and learn new things.
All right, I understand active listening. It is the heavy lifting, but I have to push back a little on the second mode, passive listening. Because I see this all over the internet, and it sounds too good to be true. I've seen so many people peddling this osmosis method, or the sleep learning myth.
Oh, the sleep learning myth?
Yeah. They tell beginners, just put on an advanced English business podcast, fall asleep with your headphones in, or play it softly while you are coding at work, and your brain will magically absorb the language. You will wake up fluent. Can you really just bypass the hard work and absorb language passively?
I'm so glad you brought that up because it is one of the most pervasive and damaging myths in the language learning community.
It is everywhere.
The expert from Migaku is very explicit in debunking this. Passive listening alone will never, ever make you fluent.
Really? Never.
Think back to Krashen's concept of comprehensible input.
Right.
You cannot acquire what you do not fundamentally understand.
Right.
If you are a beginner and you play a fast-paced, advanced philosophical podcast, it sounds like pure noise to you. It might as well be alien static.
Just a blur of sound.
Your brain is incredibly efficient. If it cannot attach meaning to a sound, it tunes it out entirely. It treats the English exactly the same way it treats the hum of your refrigerator.
So if I am playing a podcast that I do not understand while I sleep, I'm just ruining my sleep. I am not learning English.
Precisely. You are gaining nothing. Passive listening only becomes an effective tool once you have already built up a foundational vocabulary, maybe 1,000 to 2,000 words, and you have a general grasp of the sounds of the language.
Okay, so if it is not magic osmosis, what is the actual functional definition of passive listening in this framework?
Passive listening is having comprehensible language playing in the background while your conscious attention is primarily focused on a low-stakes physical activity.
Like what?
You are cooking dinner, you are going for a jog, you are washing the car, or maybe commuting on the train. You are not pausing the audio. You are not looking up words in a dictionary. The audio is simply flowing over you continuously.
But wait, if I am not looking up the words I don't know, how am I learning?
Here is the key distinction. The primary goal of passive listening is not to learn new words.
It's not.
No. The goal is to reinforce the patterns, the rhythm, and the vocabulary you've already learned. It is about building neural familiarity. You are giving your subconscious the massive volume of exposure it needs to start anticipating how sentences are formed.
Ah, I see. So active listening is planting the seeds, and passive listening is just watering them.
That is a brilliant analogy.
Yeah.
And the ultimate strategy, the real magic that Migaku suggests, is combining the two modes strategically with the exact same piece of content.
Wait, how does that work, using the same audio for both?
Yes. Let's say you find a 10-minute podcast episode. On Monday, you sit down and you spend 45 minutes doing an active listening session with it.
Okay, the heavy lifting.
You read the transcript, you look up the 20 words you didn't know, you decode the grammar, and you fully understand the context. You've burned the mental energy, you've planted the seeds.
Right.
Then for the rest of the week, Tuesday through Friday, you move that exact same 10-minute episode into your passive listening playlist on your phone. Now, when you are walking the dog on Wednesday and that audio plays in the background, it is no longer noise. Your brain recognizes it. Your subconscious picks up the rhythm and the intonation, and it repeatedly encounters those 20 new words in their natural context.
That is so smart.
You are getting dozens of repetitions and reinforcing the memory without any stress or mental exhaustion.
You do the heavy lifting once at your desk, and then you let your subconscious do the reps for free while you commute. That is an incredibly efficient use of time.
It really is.
Now, for our listeners who are eager to build this playlist, the source material from IDP gave us some fantastic, highly specific recommendations depending on what stage you are at.
Yes, curating the right content is crucial to avoid frustration.
Definitely. If you are looking for content specifically designed for active listening where you want to drill down on mechanics and vocabulary, they highly recommend Espresso English or the BBC's 6-Minute English.
Great choices.
These are perfect because they are short, structured, and most importantly, they provide full transcripts and vocabulary lists right on their websites. You aren't guessing. The study materials are provided for you.
Which saves so much time.
Yeah. Now, if you are a beginner and the BBC is still too fast, they suggest starting with a slower, heavily scaffolded pace, like Coffee Break English or the Stories podcast.
And once you cross that threshold into the intermediate or advanced stages, your goal shifts. You just want hours and hours of natural conversational input for your daily passive listening.
Just real speed.
You want the rhythm of real human interaction. For that, IDP recommends shows like the All Ears English podcast. Their whole philosophy is connection, not perfection, so you get a lot of natural banter, slang, and cultural nuance.
They also mentioned SN Day 7, which is a brilliant concept. It stands for Simple English News Daily. It is exactly what it sounds like. Global news stories delivered in slower, highly articulated, clear English.
Oh, that is fantastic.
It keeps you informed while providing perfect, comprehensible input. And of course, if you are highly advanced and want to challenge yourself with complex vocabulary and fast-paced journalism, you can graduate to The Daily by the New York Times.
The key is constantly evaluating your comprehension. If your passive listening feels like noise, downgrade the difficulty. If your active listening feels too easy and you aren't finding new words, upgrade it. You must surf that edge of comprehension.
Okay, so we have solved the input problem. Step 1 is flooding your brain with optimal, comprehensible input. We have our intense active study time at the desk and our passive reinforcement time during our commute.
We are absorbing the language.
But here is the massive looming roadblock for the solo learner. You are doing all of this alone in your apartment. Your ears are getting a fantastic workout. You understand everything you hear. But how do you train your mouth to speak?
That is the million-dollar question.
If you only ever consume input and never produce output, you become that tragic figure we all know. The person who can watch a movie in English without subtitles, but who stammers and freezes when trying to order a sandwich. How do we bridge that gap?
It is the most common plateau in language learning. The bridge between listening and speaking, especially when you have no partner to converse with, is a highly specialized technique originally developed for training simultaneous interpreters.
Interpreters, wow.
Yes, it is called shadowing. And I would argue it is the single most effective pronunciation and fluency technique that the vast majority of students have never even tried.
Shadowing. I have heard the term thrown around in language forums, but I feel like people use it incorrectly. They just mean listen and repeat, right? Like play a sentence on tape, hit pause, say the sentence, hit play.
That is exactly the misconception we need to clear up. The breakdown provided by the platform practicing, very strict about this, listening, pausing, and repeating is not shadowing.
It's not.
No, that is simply an audio dictation exercise. Consider what happens cognitively when you hit the pause button. The audio stops. You have 3 or 4 seconds of silence.
Right.
In that silence, Your brain has time to take the English sentence, translate it back into your native language to verify the meaning, analyze the grammatical structure, and then consciously construct the English response before you finally speak it.
Ah, the monitor. The grammar police officer kicks in because you gave him the time to look at the paperwork?
Exactly. The pause invites the monitor to take over the process.
Yeah.
You are back to conscious learning. Shadowing is designed to bypass the monitor entirely.
How does it do that?
By definition, true shadowing means you listen to a native speaker through headphones and you repeat what they are saying almost simultaneously, usually just a fraction of a second behind them while the audio is still continuously playing.
So no pausing at all.
You do not hit pause. You are speaking over them, acting as a real-time echo. Your mouth is forced to keep up with your ears at the exact speed of natural speech.
That sounds, honestly, it sounds incredibly stressful. It sounds like a massive mental juggling act. I mean, I have a hard enough time singing along to a song I know well, let alone shadowing a complex English podcast in real time. How is the brain even capable of that?
It is highly cognitively intense, especially at first. But the neuroscience behind why it works is absolutely astounding. To understand it, we need to look at a specific component of your working memory called the phonological loop.
The phonological loop. Break that down for me.
Imagine your working memory has a tiny, temporary whiteboard that stores auditory information sounds for about 2 seconds before it gets wiped clean to make room for new sounds. That is your phonological loop.
Okay, a 2-second whiteboard.
It is the mechanism you use when someone tells you a phone number, and you repeat it silently in your head over and over till you can find a pen to write it down.
Right, I know that feeling.
When you do a shadowing exercise, you are forcing this loop to operate at maximum peak capacity. You are listening to new sounds, temporarily storing them on the whiteboard, and physically reproducing them with your vocal cords, all in the exact same millisecond.
So because you are demanding so much from the brain's processing power, there is literally no computing energy left over to translate the words into your native language. You are forcing the brain to process the English purely as English.
You are short-circuiting the translation habit. And this isn't just theoretical psychology. A landmark neuroimaging study conducted by researchers at Tohoku University provided physical proof of this.
What did they find?
They took participants, had them undergo extensive shadowing training, and then looked at their brain scans. They found measurable physical changes, actual neuroplasticity in the left cerebellum.
The cerebellum. Isn't that the part of the brain that controls physical movement and balance?
Yes, and that is the beauty of it. Speaking a language is not just a mental exercise.
Yeah.
It is a complex motor skill.
Like learning to dance.
Exactly. Your tongue, lips, and jaw are muscles that need physical gym time to learn the specific gymnastics required for English sounds. The left cerebellum is directly linked to the phonological loop and motor control.
That is incredible.
The brains of the participants literally rewired themselves to process language sounds more efficiently and coordinate the physical movements required to produce them. Furthermore, research by a linguist named Kodota showed that shadowing strengthens what is called phonological encoding.
Which means what, practically speaking?
It means you aren't just learning to pronounce individual words cleanly, you are absorbing the musical prosody of the language. You are internalizing the rhythm, the intonation, where the stress falls in a sentence, and how words link together.
The actual music of the language.
Right. You are also absorbing implicit grammar, the structural patterns, without ever looking at a rule book, because your mouth is getting used to the physical feeling of saying the words in the correct order.
Okay, I am completely sold on the neuroscience. The brain rewiring, the physical gym time for the mouth, it makes perfect sense. But how do we actually execute this without getting completely overwhelmed?
It can be overwhelming if you jump in too fast.
Because if I just turn on a fast-paced news broadcast right now and try to speak over it, I'm going to end up speaking gibberish and getting incredibly frustrated. The Practicing Me source outlined a specific step-by-step method for this, didn't they?
They did. They laid out a 5-step method, and they stressed that you cannot skip steps, especially if you are new to the technique. It is a progression designed to build competence without spiking your effective filter.
Let's walk through it. Step 1.
Step 1 is crucial. Choose your audio carefully. You only want a 1 to 2 minute clip. Do not try to shadow a 2-hour podcast. You will exhaust yourself.
I'll keep it short.
And more importantly, the audio must be highly comprehensible. You need to already understand at least 80 to 90% of the vocabulary in the clip. If you try to shadow an advanced philosophical debate filled with words you don't know, you aren't shadowing. You are just mimicking meaningless noise.
Right. It has to be language you have already acquired, So the brain focuses entirely on the physical output, not on decoding the meaning.
Exactly. Then you move to step 2. Listen first, without speaking. Play the 2-minute clip a few times, just to comprehend the overall meaning.
So just get a feel for it.
Pay attention to the speaker's emotional tone, where they pause for breath, and how they emphasize certain words. You must have full comprehension before you attempt imitation.
Okay, I have got the 2-minute clip. I know what it means. Step 3 is where it gets real.
Step 3 is shadowing with the transcript.
Ah.
You have the text in front of you, you play the audio, and you speak continuously along with the speaker, reading the text as you go.
Oh, okay.
This is shadowing with training wheels. Your eyes are helping your ears anticipate what is coming next. If you are a beginner, or if you find the exercise overwhelming, you might stay on this step for weeks. And that is a perfectly valid and effective way to practice.
I imagine having the text there relieves a lot of the cognitive pressure. It stops you from panicking if you miss a sound.
It manages the stress level beautifully, but eventually you want to push your brain further. Step 4 is taking the training wheels off. You put the transcript away, you play the audio, and you shadow relying entirely on your ears in your phonological loop.
That feels like the moment of truth right there. What happens if I am doing step 4, I am shadowing along, and I stumble over a complex word? Do I hit pause, rewind, and try to get it perfect?
The source material is very clear on this. Absolutely not.
Don't stop.
Do not worry about getting every single word perfectly accurate. If you stumble, if you miss a word, or if you mumble through a fast phrase, do not stop. Do not hit pause. Just jump right back into the flow of the next sentence.
That is hard to do.
It is. But remember, the primary goal of shadowing is not perfect diction. It is training the rhythm, the continuous flow, and the physical endurance of speaking without hesitating.
Keep the momentum going at all costs. And that brings us to the final step, step 5, which, frankly, sounds like the most uncomfortable part of the entire process.
It is highly uncomfortable, but it is the most necessary step for actual improvement. Step 5 is record yourself and compare.
Oh, brutal.
You use your smartphone to record your own voice while you are doing the shadowing exercise. Then you sit down and play your recording side by side with the original native audio.
Everyone hates hearing their own voice recorded.
They all do. But it is the only way to get objective feedback when you don't have a teacher sitting next to you. When you are speaking, the bones in your skull vibrate, which distorts how you hear yourself.
Right.
You might think you sound exactly like the British news anchor you were shadowing, but the recording will reveal the truth. It exposes the gap between your perception and reality.
It keeps you honest.
It allows you to pinpoint exactly where your vowels are too long or where your intonation is flat instead of rising. It is painful, but it is incredibly effective.
I want to highlight a really crucial rule about shadowing that the host of Practice-Y pointed out, and it is something I think a lot of self-taught learners mess up. You have to pick one specific regional accent and stick to it relentlessly during your daily shadowing practice. You cannot mix and match.
This is a vital point about building muscle memory.
Right. Think about the phonetics. Let's say you decide to shadow an American speaker on Monday. You are physically training your tongue to produce the American flap T, which is when the T in the middle of a word sounds more like a soft D.
Yes.
So you spend Monday training your mouth to say water as water or better as better. You are also training the erotic R, meaning you aggressively pronounce every single R sound at the end of words like car or hard.
You are building specific neural pathways for those exact muscular movements.
Exactly. But then, on Tuesday, you decide to shadow a BBC documentary with a standard British speaker. Now, suddenly, you are trying to pronounce a crisp, aspirated T saying water.
Right.
And you are trying to learn the non-erotic R, where you drop the R sound entirely and car becomes ka. If you alternate between an American speaker on Monday and a British speaker on Tuesday, you are actively confusing your own muscle memory.
You really are.
You are giving your tongue contradictory instructions. It is like trying to learn the mechanics of a tennis backhand and a golf swing at the exact same time using the exact same arm. You are going to end up with a messy hybrid swing that doesn't work for either sport. You have to pick a lane.
That is an excellent analogy. Consistency is the only way to build clean, automatic muscle memory. Choose an accent that appeals to you, or one that aligns with your professional goals, and curate your shadowing audio exclusively from speakers of that region.
Make a choice and stick to it.
Exactly. Now, I should add a caveat. As we discussed, simultaneous shadowing is intense.
Hmm.
If it feels too overwhelming at first, or if it spikes your effective filter and makes you feel frustrated, the English in Minutes source suggests a lighter but still highly effective variation called echoing.
Echoing. How does echoing differ from the dictation we were criticizing earlier?
With echoing, you do wait for the native speaker to finish a short sentence or a phrase. You listen, they finish, and there's a brief pause.
Okay.
But, and this is the critical difference, you do not take that pause to translate or analyze the grammar. Instead, you immediately mimic their exact output from your short-term memory, placing hyper-focus on matching their emotional tone, their rhythm, and their exact melody.
Like an actor.
Yes, you are an actor repeating a line trying to sound exactly like the character.
Hmm.
It is slightly less cognitively intense than simultaneous shadowing, but it still trains the phonological loop and improves prosody without triggering the conscious monitor. It is highly recommended to practice both techniques.
Okay, so we have active listening, passive listening, and shadowing. But let's be realistic about human endurance for a second.
Let's do that.
Shadowing and echoing burn immense amounts of brain glucose. You can maybe do a focused shadowing session for 15-20 minutes a day before your phonological loop is completely fried. You cannot maintain that intensity all evening.
No, definitely not.
So what happens when it is 8 p.m., you have had a long day at work, you have done your 20 minutes of active study, and you are just exhausted. You just want to collapse on the couch. Does the immersion have to stop? Does language acquisition just end for the day?
Absolutely not. In fact, some of the most powerful acquisition happens precisely when you are exhausted and relaxing.
Sure.
This is what we call couch immersion, and it involves hacking your Netflix and YouTube habits to become an effortless acquisition engine.
Hacking Netflix. Okay, but how does being exhausted actually help? That seems counterintuitive.
It goes back to the effective filter we talked about earlier. When you are collapsed on the couch, deeply invested in a great television drama, or laughing at a sitcom, your effective filter is at its absolute lowest point.
Your guard is totally down.
Exactly. You are not thinking about grammar rules. You are not stressed about passing a test. You are simply seeking entertainment. And as the guides from the Egyptian American Center in Mosalingua explain, when the brain is entertained and relaxed, it is incredibly porous and receptive to new language patterns.
That makes sense. But why does television specifically work so well for language learning? Because, let's be honest, the dialogue in a typical ESL textbook is excruciatingly dry.
Oh, it's terrible.
It is usually two aliens pretending to be human. Like, hello, John, how's the weather today? It is raining, Susan, I have an umbrella. Nobody actually talks like that in the real world.
Exactly. Textbooks teach a sanitized, artificial version of the language. Television provides real conversational English. It exposes you to the messy reality of how people actually speak the slang, the interrupted sentences, the regional idioms, the real stuff.
But more importantly than all of that, television provides vital emotional context.
Emotional context. Can you give me an example of how that helps memory?
Well, think about trying to learn the word exhausted from a vocabulary list. It is just black ink on white paper. You might memorize the translation, but it has no weight. It doesn't stick in the brain.
Right.
Now, imagine you are watching a tense, emotional drama. The protagonist has been awake for 3 days trying to solve a crime. They finally collapse onto the floor, burst into tears, look at their partner and scream, "I'm absolutely exhausted."
Oh, wow.
In that moment, your brain doesn't just process a word. It immediately connects the sound of the word exhausted to the visual of the person collapsing, the sound of the crying, and the deep, visceral feeling of fatigue.
We feel the word.
Yes, that emotional connection, the narrative stakes, anchors the vocabulary into your long-term memory far more securely and rapidly than a flashcard ever could. The brain remembers stories and emotions. It discards abstract lists. Okay, I love the idea of couch immersion, but I know there has to be a catch. There has to be a strategic framework here. Because I cannot just throw on an English movie, scroll through social media on my phone for 2 hours, and expect to magically absorb the vocabulary, right?
No, you cannot.
Yeah.
Passive viewing without engagement is just background noise. To optimize your Netflix binge for actual acquisition, you have to follow 3 core rules. Rule number 1, always use English subtitles.
Okay, wait. I have to push back on this because this is a huge debate in the language learning community.
I know it is.
If I turn on English subtitles, aren't I just doing a reading exercise? My eyes are glued to the bottom of the screen. I feel like I am completely ignoring the audio. How does reading make me a better speaker or listener? Isn't it just a crutch?
It is a very common concern, but the cognitive science says otherwise. You are not ignoring the audio. You are engaging in what is called dual coding.
Dual coding, what's that?
When you listen to a word and read it at the exact same millisecond, you are actively bridging the gap between orthography, how a word is spelled, and phonology, how it sounds. This is incredibly important in English, which has a notoriously chaotic spelling system.
True. Words like kernel or choir look nothing like how they actually sound.
Exactly. If you only ever heard the word choir, you might not recognize it when you read it later. Subtitles instantly connect the spoken sound to the written word in real time, reinforcing spelling, pronunciation, and meaning simultaneously.
So it's building stronger connections.
Yes. Now, Moslingua notes that if you are a true beginner, watching native content with English subtitles might be too overwhelming, and you might need to start with subtitles in your native language just to follow the plot.
Just to not get lost.
But you must transition to English subtitles as soon as humanly possible to get the dual coding benefits. And eventually, as you reach advanced fluency, your goal is to turn them off entirely and rely solely on your ears.
All right, dual coding. I will accept the subtitles. What is rule 2?
Rule 2 is choosing level-appropriate content. This mirrors what we discussed with active listening. If you are a beginner, throwing on a gritty medical drama filled with high-speed dialogue, overlapping voices, and complex anatomical jargon is going to be a nightmare.
Yeah, that would be terrible.
It will spike your effective filter, you will get frustrated, and you will learn absolutely nothing.
So what should a beginner watch?
Moslingua strongly suggests starting with children's programming or nature documentaries. I know adults sometimes resist this, feeling it's beneath them, but shows like Sesame Street are literally engineered by child psychologists to teach fundamental communication.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
The language is extremely simple, the enunciation is slow and exaggerated, there is no confusing slang, and the visuals perfectly match the vocabulary being used. Documentaries are also great because the narrator speaks slowly and clearly describes exactly what is happening on screen.
Right. The lion hunts the gazelle. Very clear visual context.
Exactly. As you move to an intermediate level, you want to transition to sitcoms that feature everyday, domestic dialogue, shows like The Good Place, Friends, or Stranger Things.
Just normal people talking.
Right. The vocabulary is centered around daily life, relationships, jobs, going to the store. When you finally hit the advanced stage, then you can challenge yourself with fast-paced comedies packed with cultural references like Brooklyn Nine-Nine or dense, dialogue-heavy historical dramas like The Crown.
And that brings us to Rule 3, which I absolutely love because it guards against burnout. Rule 3 is keeping a small vocabulary notebook next to the popcorn on the couch.
Yes.
But, and this is a massive caveat, you must strictly limit yourself to writing down only 5 new words or expressions per episode.
Why do you think that limit is so important?
Because of the effective filter. I mean, if I sit down to watch a 40-minute episode of a show and I encounter 50 words I don't know and I pause the TV 50 times to write them all down, I have completely destroyed the pacing of the story.
You've ruined the show.
Exactly. I am going to get incredibly annoyed. My partner sitting next to me is going to leave the room, and I have just turned movie night into a stressful, exhausting chore. My brain will start associating English television with frustration instead of relaxation.
You have hit the nail on the head. If you turn entertainment into a grueling task, your cortisol levels rise, the effective filter goes up, and your brain physically blocks the hippocampus from encoding new memories.
Wow.
The primary goal of couch immersion is sustained, relaxed, long-term engagement. 5 words an episode is the sweet spot. It takes 30 seconds to jot them down.
Yeah.
You don't ruin the flow of the story.
Right.
And if you watch 1 episode a night for a year, 5 words a night equals over 1,800 new, emotionally anchored words added to your vocabulary. That is massive progress without any stress.
The psychological aspect of engagement here is huge. The Migaku source emphasized this beautifully. Above all else, you must choose content that matches your genuine personal interests.
That is so true.
The author of that guide mentioned that they spent hundreds of hours watching true crime documentaries and true crime podcasts in Japanese. Not because it was the most optimal vocabulary for daily life, but simply because they were absolutely obsessed with true crime stories.
And that obsession is the key to endurance. If you pick a show you actually care about, your brain stays highly engaged and desperate to understand the meaning, even when the linguistic mechanics are difficult.
You want to know who did it.
Exactly. As the author put it, where there is interest, learning follows.
Yeah.
If you try to watch an acclaimed historical drama because you think it will have good vocabulary, but you find history boring, your brain will tune the language out completely.
Intrinsic motivation is the ultimate hack. It keeps you coming back to the couch day after day. Okay, so let's look at the blueprint we have built so far. We have dedicated active study time with shadowing to train the mouth.
We do.
We have optimized our leisure time on the couch with Netflix to absorb vocabulary. We have passive listening during our commute. But the final piece of the puzzle is addressing the rest of your day.
The busy parts.
Exactly. We all have busy, chaotic lives. Most people listening to this don't have 3 hours a day to dedicate to language learning. How do you integrate English into the mundane, busy parts of your life without having to carve out more hours in your already packed schedule? How do we build a truly relentless immersion environment?
The answer lies in a behavioral psychology concept called habit stacking, which was brilliantly applied to language learning in the source material by Susan Brodar from Speak Languages.
Habit stacking.
Yes, habit stacking is an absolute game changer for busy professionals. It is the practice of taking a new desired behavior, like practicing English vocabulary, and pairing it permanently with an existing automatic daily habit or a period of dead time.
Dead time. What exactly qualifies as dead time?
Dead time is any moment in your day where you're performing a routine physical activity that requires zero mental cognitive load. You are basically on autopilot.
So, making my morning coffee, folding the laundry, brushing my teeth, or washing the dishes. My hands are busy, but my brain is completely idle.
Exactly. Susan gives a perfect practical example of how she stacks habits in her own morning routine. She wakes up, goes to the kitchen, and begins making her morning coffee and squeezing lemon juice.
Okay.
This is a physical process that takes about 5 to 7 minutes every single day. Because her hands are busy but her mind is free, she uses those exact 5 minutes to open a language app on her phone and listen and repeat her daily vocabulary. She stacked the new habit vocabulary onto the established anchor habit, making coffee.
So she didn't have to wake up 10 minutes earlier to find time to study. The time was already there, hidden in the routine.
Precisely. And she takes it further. Later in the day, she does 15 minutes of abdominal workouts. She mentions that she absolutely hates doing ab workouts.
Who doesn't?
Right, so she stacks it. She puts on a compelling podcast in her target language while she exercises. Not only does she get 15 minutes of excellent comprehensible input, but the engaging audio actually distracts her brain from the physical discomfort of the workout.
She stacked something she dislikes with something mentally engaging. That is incredibly smart. It transforms wasted minutes or even painful minutes into a productive immersion environment. And because the anchor habit happens every day, the language practice happens every day automatically.
It ensures consistency without requiring massive amounts of willpower. But we can take this concept of utilizing solo time a step further. We have talked a lot about input, but the sources from English in Minutes and Towards Fluency outline a specific menu of daily micro-habits that force you to engage in active output.
Active output.
These are drills designed to get you actually speaking, generating sentences from scratch, even if you are entirely alone in your apartment.
Let's run through this menu of solo speaking drills because I think this is the real secret to developing fluency when you don't have a speaking partner or the money for a tutor. The first micro habit they suggest is called thinking aloud or narrating. What is the mechanics of this?
It is beautifully simple, though it feels strange at first. You simply narrate your own physical actions out loud as you do them throughout your house.
Wait, like talking to myself?
Yes. I am walking into the kitchen. I am opening the refrigerator. I am taking out the milk. The milk is cold. I am pouring it into the blue cup. You act as a play-by-play announcer for your own mundane life.
I can hear the listeners cringing right now, like, you want me to walk around my house talking to my coffee cup?
It seems almost too simple and, frankly, a bit ridiculous. Why does this work?
It feels ridiculous, but neurologically, it is profoundly effective. When you narrate your immediate environment, you are training your brain to connect physical actions, sensory feelings, and real-world objects directly with the English vocabulary.
So no translating.
You are bypassing the translation phase entirely. When you touch a cold milk carton and immediately say the word cold out loud, you are forging a direct neural link between the physical sensation and the English sound without having to route the thought through your native language first. You're training yourself to think in English. You're turning your entire house into a living, interactive vocabulary test. Okay, I see the value. The second drill on the menu is the 1-minute non-stop drill. I absolutely love this one because it is not about accuracy. It builds sheer speaking endurance. How does it work?
You set a timer on your phone for exactly 60 seconds. You pick a random simple topic. It could be your favorite food, a summary of a movie you just watched, or what you plan to do this weekend. It is exactly the cure for the overuser. The 1-minute drill is designed to actively suppress the internal grammar police officer. You are teaching your brain that it is perfectly okay to produce imperfect language.
Just keep moving.
You are prioritizing momentum and fluidity over structural perfection. You are training the panic response out of your system so that when you are in a real conversation, your brain knows how to keep the words flowing, even when it hits a bump.
But let me ask a practical question. What happens when I am doing that 1-minute drill? I am talking at full speed about what's in my bag, and I completely, genuinely forget a piece of vocabulary. Like my brain just deletes the word wallet. I cannot keep the momentum going if I literally lack the word.
That scenario is exactly why the third vital microhabit is so important. It is a skill called circumlocution.
Circumlocution.
This is the psychological art of talking around a word that you have forgotten,
Huh.
rather than letting the missing word stop the conversation.
Talking around it. Give me an example with the forgotten wallet.
If you are an untrained learner and you forget the word wallet, you freeze. You panic, you stutter, you apologize, and you either switch to your native language to ask for translation or you abandon the sentence entirely.
Your affective filter spikes.
Exactly. But if you have trained in circumlocution, you realize a missing word is just a slight detour. You don't need the word wallet. You simply describe the object's function or appearance using the simpler vocabulary you already possess. You say, the small leather case where I keep my money and my credit cards.
Oh, you just described the definition of the thing. Use 10 simple words to replace one complex word.
Exactly. Or if you forget the word dentist, you say, the doctor who fixes teeth. If you forget umbrella, you say, the thing I hold over my head to stop the rain.
That is brilliant.
Practicing circumlocution during your solo drills makes you fearless in real-world conversations because you realize that forgetting a word is never a dead end. You possess the creative tools to explain anything you want to say. You become self-sufficient.
That is incredibly empowering. It shifts the mindset from, I don't know enough vocabulary to, how can I use the vocabulary I have to solve this puzzle? And that leads perfectly into the final microhabit from the menu, which is paraphrasing and expanding. This comes from the Speak English Guide by Claire Whitmel. What is the goal here?
The goal of expanding is to move your speech from sounding like a beginner's choppy list of facts to sounding like a natural, flowing narrative. Beginners tend to speak in short, isolated sentences like, I like coffee. It is hot. I drink it in the morning.
Very robotic.
It conveys the meaning, but it lacks sophistication. Whitmel emphasizes the deliberate practice of using simple connectors, words like and, but so and, because to stretch those simple thoughts into longer, complex, compound sentences.
So stitching the fragments together.
Yes. You practice taking I like coffee and forcing yourself to add a because, so it becomes I like coffee because it wakes me up. Then you add an and. I like coffee because it wakes me up, and I really enjoy the quiet aroma in the kitchen before I go to work. You are taking the exact same basic vocabulary you already know, but you are making it work much harder for you. You are building fluency through structure, not just by memorizing more words.
I want to pause here because I know exactly what some listeners are feeling right now as they hear us outline this solo immersion environment.
What's that?
You're thinking, this all sounds theoretically great, but I am going to feel like an absolute lunatic walking around my kitchen alone, narrating my actions to my refrigerator, describing my wallet using circumlocution, and talking nonstop for a minute about my breakfast. And I get it. I really do. It feels foolish. It feels awkward. You feel like a crazy person.
It requires a suspension of ego, certainly.
But I want to remind you of something fundamental about human psychology and skill acquisition. Making mistakes in the complete privacy of your own home, sounding foolish to an empty room, tripping over your words when no one is watching, that is exactly how you build the impenetrable armor you need for public conversations.
That is a great way to frame it.
Think back to Krashen's affective filter. When you stumble over a complex sentence in your kitchen, there is zero judgment. Nobody is grading you. Nobody is laughing. Your affective filter remains at absolute zero.
It is the ultimate low-stakes practice arena. You are free to experiment, fail, and try again instantly without any social penalty.
Exactly. Every time you narrate your day out loud, every time you force your way through a 1-minute drill, every time you shadow a podcast and get your tongue twisted, you are physically laying down thick, robust neural pathways in your brain.
We're building the muscle.
You are building the muscle memory in a perfectly safe space so that months from now, when you step out into the real world and a native speaker asks you a question, your mouth already knows the physical movements. You don't have to think, you just respond.
The private awkwardness is the price you pay for public confidence. If you avoid the awkwardness alone, you will inevitably face it in public.
Okay, let's take a breath and look back at the massive amount of ground we have covered in this deep dive.
We've covered a lot.
We started by looking at the fundamental flaw in traditional education. We dismantled the old classroom model, the idea that you can achieve fluency by memorizing the 400-page physics manual of grammar rules. We saw how the conscious learning of structures builds up the internal monitor, turning us into hesitant manwords. Overusers paralyzed by the fear of making mistakes.
And how high-stress environments build an effective filter that literally blocks language from entering the brain.
Instead, we embrace Krashen's model of subconscious natural acquisition, the idea that fluency comes from engaging with comprehensible, meaningful input in a low-stress environment.
Right. And we learned how to manage that input by strategically dividing our listening into two distinct modes.
Active and passive.
We use active listening to intensively study, pause, look up words, and decode new material, burning the mental energy to plant the seeds. And then we use passive listening during our commutes and chores to effortlessly reinforce those exact same patterns, letting the subconscious water the seeds.
We also tackled the terrifying gap between listening and speaking by exploring the brain rewiring neuroscience of shadowing.
Yes, the phonological loop.
We learned how to overload the phonological loop and trigger actual physical changes in the cerebellum by speaking simultaneously with a native audio track. We laid out the 5-step method, from using transcripts as training wheels to the painful necessity of recording our own voices.
And we established the vital rule of sticking to one specific regional accent so we don't confuse our developing muscle memory.
When the shadowing exhausted us, we didn't quit. We moved to couch immersion. We turned our Netflix binges into vocabulary gold mines by utilizing dual coding with English subtitles, picking content appropriate to our level, and strictly limiting ourselves to writing down only 5 new words an episode so we didn't destroy the fun and spike our stress levels.
And finally, we engineered a relentless 24/7 solo immersion environment by looking at the hidden dead time in our schedule.
Habit stacking.
We used habit stacking to attach English input to mundane tasks like making coffee or exercising. We engaged in active output micro-habits, narrating our physical actions, forcing fluidity with 1-minute speaking drills, and mastering circumlocution so we never freeze when we forget a word again.
It is a complete self-sustaining ecosystem. I want to speak directly to you, the listener, as we wrap this up. If you've been frustrated with your English journey for years, if you have felt that heavy, sinking paralysis in your chest when trying to speak to a native speaker, I want you to internalize a new truth today.
It is so important.
Fluency is not a magical genetic talent that you were born without. It is not an exclusive club. It is certainly not about speaking with maximum speed, and it is definitely not about achieving grammatical perfection. Fluency is about human connection, it is about clarity of meaning, and it is about relentless daily consistency.
The methods we unpack today prove that you have complete, autonomous control over your learning environment. You do not need permission from an institution. You have the exact scientific tools required to rewire your brain from the comfort of your own living room.
Be kind to yourself as you start applying these tools. Make a conscious effort to lower that affective filter. Forgive yourself for the mistakes you make during your 1-minute drills. Forget the red ink of your past high school English teacher.
Let it all go.
Trust this process of deep immersion and fearless output. We started today by talking about how traditional education handed you a physics manual and expected you to know how to ride a bicycle. Well, today, you threw away the manual. You know the physics don't matter when you're in the saddle. You know how to actually get on the bike, pedal, crash, and get back up.
Just keep pedaling.
And I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over as you start this new 30-day journey. We spend so much time, money, and energy searching for the perfect tutor, the perfect language partner, or the perfect app to finally unlock our fluency.
We really do.
But what if the absolute best, most patient, most dedicated, and most effective language teacher you will ever have in your entire life isn't standing at a whiteboard in some prestigious university classroom? What if that ultimate teacher is actually just the quiet, persistent voice inside your own head, bravely and foolishly narrating your morning coffee routine to an empty room?